Whoa! No way at all, really? Shit.
On August 5th, it's like there was a nuclear explosion in Moscow.
And now the shockwave is about to reach us too.
Are you kidding me?
The SBU is blowing up gas pipelines near Moscow. Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Sochi are on fire.
Fuck! We're screwed, gentlemen.
Rosneft's oil depots are burning.
Oh, fuck!
Factories, defense plants, and airports in St. Petersburg, Sochi, Penza, and Samara are shut down. There are strikes there, and entire districts are losing power.
What's burning over there?
The airport. Damn, I'm really freaking out. Look, there's more.
Russian airports are burning, Crimea is on fire. The 880th Marine Brigade in Kazakhia Bay and Russian air defense facilities near the airfield are under attack.
Boom! Fire, fire! The Novokuibyshevsk oil refinery is now blazing intensely after a successful SBU special operation. Boom, bada, boom! This significant incident highlights the ongoing conflict. Can we stop already? Stop this bullshit. In short, they blew up an oil depot. And again they armed themselves.
The Central Asia gas pipeline, a center supplying defense plants in the Moscow region, was blown up. Special Operation Web 2. Meanwhile, US nuclear submarines are approaching Russia's borders. This is a new phase of pressure. Bloody August has begun for Russia.
Your mother. Holy shit, unbelievable!
Sensational news. This is what Russia looks like today, like a nuclear explosion. This is not a drill, not a simulation. This is a fire at the Novokuibyshevsk oil refinery after an SBU special operation. Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Sochi are burning. In Sochi, explosions near the airport, windows are shaking, flights are cancelled. The airport has been evacuated, everyone is in bomb shelters. The SBU did it again. Operation Spiderweb continues. Meanwhile, US nuclear submarines are approaching Russia's borders. This is a new phase of pressure. A bloody August has begun for Russia.
Damn, that's some fire. Man, I'm really freaking out. Look at that. I'm filming.
The FU are blowing up Russia from the inside. Oil refineries, gas pipelines, airfields, and the defense industry are burning. Meanwhile, Trump is moving nuclear submarines closer to Russia. This is no longer just a war, it's a global power play. Hackers have taken down Aeroflot's operations. Trump has moved nuclear submarines closer to Russia. An earthquake in Kamchatka has destroyed nuclear bases there. And yet August has only just begun. It's the last month of summer that has often turned truly bloody and catastrophic for Russia. We'll discuss all this with top analyst Oleksandr Demchenko right now.
Check.
August has only just begun. As I understand it, it's going to be a bloody one for Russia. What do you say?
I'll tell you what I say. It's all bullshit. You understand? Him, Dima Medvedev, and everyone else in the world. August has only just begun. I'm telling you, August will be black, August will be red for Russia. Not communist red, but blood red for the Russian Federation and for the regime. Look, it's only the very first days of August, and already everything is burning. Yes, there will be payback for absolutely everything. I'll tell you, Trump is fed up with Putin. Yes, Utkin is in Moscow. Utkin is holding negotiations, that guy bitten by a goose. But everyone understands perfectly well that this is a pointless collective effort, that there will be no negotiations, no achievements as a result of these talks. And Putin is in Valam, where he held a memorial service for Alexander Lukashenko. We saw that he didn't want to make the sign of the cross. Lukashenko didn't want to make the sign of the cross on himself there, you see, to pretend. He didn't understand why he was there. Maybe he's already been mummified in Belarus. He didn't fly back to Minsk. He just disappeared somewhere in Valam with Lukashenko. Maybe they've already buried him. But you see, Dasha, the point is that really it's only just begun, and already there's adversity in Sochi, already somewhere in St. Petersburg, already in Moscow, and now even in Crimea. In other words, there are massive strikes happening. Yesterday, I just opened, even not just yesterday, but this morning, I opened the maps, and some Telegram channels are just showing a map of how Ukraine is sending drones. Everything is red. So many drones, you understand? I haven't seen Ukraine launch this many drones before. I think that Ukraine has prepared, and the Americans have prepared and helped Ukraine with a considerable number of missiles. Soon, Skabiva won't be counting anymore, sitting there in her capital in Moscow, in her studio. She's no longer giving a countdown. She doesn't even know how to count anymore. She was counting 43 days, 42, 41, but now there's nothing left to count. That's it. The countdown is over. The counter is broken for both her and Medvedev. Medvedev has gone silent. His Telegram isn't posting anything anymore. No posts at all. But the point is, Dasha, that they're all waiting. You say that Russia, that everything is trembling in Russia. They're trembling, they're trembling. They don't know how to respond to Trump. They no longer understand whether they're allowed to say anything or not, whether they should keep raising the stakes or if they shouldn't. It's also unclear who else they should invite to Valam. Isn't that right? Here's Medvedev, who will soon replace the Abu toy. I think they'll use him to scare people. They'll just make little Medvedev toys and use them to frighten Russian children at night. But, you see, he can't say anything anymore. They've already come to an agreement. American nuclear submarines, atomic subs, have already approached somewhere close to Russia. The Pentagon is hiding everything, as always. But we understand perfectly well that if Trump has said it out loud, then it really means they are now within range, within direct striking distance. They were afraid of a 7-minute flight time. Now there won't be any flight time at all. They're already close, somewhere nearby, near Moscow, close to St. Petersburg, near Moscow, somewhere circling around Russia. You've noticed, Dasha, lately this news has been discussed very often, that the explosion in Kamchatka didn't just happen for no reason. That it wasn't just by chance there were as many as 16 earthquakes there, you see? If, say, in another normal country, someone experienced 16 earthquakes at once, surely anyone who goes to those churches, yes, the Valam ones, would think to themselves, damn, maybe the Almighty is already displeased with something. Maybe it's time to put an end to all this mess. But no, we'll go all the way to the end. So, 16 earthquakes, a bunch of tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and there are rumors that these are failed nuclear tests of the Poseidon system, the very one Vladimir Rudolfovich Solovyov used to scare people with on Russian TV channels. Apparently, everything went ineffectively, just like with Oreshnik last time, when it fell on their own territory. So here we have another failed nuclear test, and Kamchatka has sunk. And along with Kamchatka, the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Federation as well. They even said that Russian submarines were damaged. They couldn't even hide that. The Pacific Fleet was stationed there in Kamchatka. Notice, for a whole month now, and I'm being absolutely serious here, no beating around the bush. For a whole month, we've been discussing this situation with you. Why Kamchatka was suddenly closed off. We couldn't understand why it was shut down, why an anti-drone system was installed there, why a no-fly zone was imposed. Yes, it was introduced out of nowhere. Why is there so much military equipment on Kamchatka's territory? Why is the Pacific Fleet, the entire flotilla, being reinforced there? Why, in general, is there an accumulation of additional submarines and so on there? We couldn't figure out what was going on. We thought maybe there would be an attack on Kamchatka. Yes, there was an attack on Kamchatka, but not from Ukraine, from Vladimir Putin himself. Apparently, he just wanted once again to test out some nuclear forces. Maybe that's why Trump shortened his ultimatum from 50 days to just 10. I wouldn't rule out that this nuclear rhetoric has not only had negative consequences for Vladimir Putin, I think they really did start rattling their nuclear weapons. Just notice, Lukashenko in Valam, stories about Oreshnik, Kamchatka, strange earthquakes. Everyone around is evacuating their population, from Japan to Peru and Chile. Hawaii, the Galapagos, everywhere, everything you can imagine. Alaska. It's all evacuation, right? Evacuation everywhere. Maybe something happened there too, nobody knows. They're always scaring people. They're always talking nonsense. It could be a coincidence, or maybe they really did test something. And the Americans probably really did decide to act preemptively. That's the first thing. And the second is raising the stakes. There was a rumor in Moscow that American submarines had approached. Let's go. We're ready. Like Trump said, we're ready for nuclear war. A lot of people criticized and still criticize Trump. But can you imagine Biden sending nuclear submarines toward Russia? Can you imagine him saying, we're ready for nuclear war, we're ready to destroy you? I don't envy Medvedev, you know, Dasha. He drank himself into oblivion out of fear. He really did drink himself into oblivion from fear. They put him and his people in jail, his closest circle was imprisoned, all his money, everything was exposed. His latest schemes, the most notorious ones, were exposed for $1 billion. He's under the FSB's thumb. Putin has more than one file on him. He's terrified out of his mind. And he knows perfectly well that this is what he has to say. He doesn't write it himself. They write it for him when he's drunk. 2 of Vladimir Putin's PR people write it for him. Everyone who works in this field knows the names of these PR people. And these people write for Medvedev every single time. He says it all, sometimes from a tablet, sometimes without one. He says it all while drunk. He's afraid. He's scared. He's not scared because he's afraid of Trump, not because he thinks something might happen to him at the hands of America or Ukraine. He's afraid of Putin. He's afraid that Putin will find him useless, and in the end, that Putin will simply have him killed. Somewhere in the center of Moscow. You understand? And Shoigu is afraid, and Medvedev is afraid, and all of Vladimir Putin's old men, everyone around him, this whole herd of gerontocrats, they're all afraid. They're all afraid that they'll simply become unnecessary and be sent to the slaughter. Because for now, they're just standing around, doing nothing, sometimes saying something, making some statements, chiming in here and there, but nothing more. They're not needed. All the flows have been redirected toward Putin and his family. There are young people there who want to tear apart, just like during Viktor Yanukovych's time, the whole country and all the flows for themselves, you see, to grab everything. It's the same thing there. That's how much degradation is happening. So what we're seeing now, just to wrap up, right? As for these strikes on the oil refineries, massive strikes, heavy strikes on the oil refineries. All of Russia is burning, Dasha. And oil refineries are a very important target. That's gasoline. That's a future gasoline crisis in Russia. That's a lack of gasoline at gas stations. That's a shortage of fuel and the inability to deliver fuel directly to certain army units in the Russian Federation at the front. So this is important. The destruction of railways, entire stretches of railway tracks across Russia in many Russian regions like Voronezh, Bryansk, and Rostov regions, all along the perimeter. This is extremely important. Ukraine is disrupting this summer-autumn offensive, the remaining offensive of Vladimir Putin. The first phase failed, in June and July, when he couldn't take anything at all. He was telling everyone, together with Skabiva and Solovyov, that they would take everything now, surround everything, seize it all, and so on. And what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So here's my next prediction. We need to keep a close eye on Belarus. It seems to me that Putin wants to remove Lukashenko and occupy Belarus in the near future. We need to watch what will be happening inside Russia because the purges have only just begun and ministers will still be thrown out of windows and shoot themselves. This is only the beginning, and above all, we also need to pay attention to what will happen after the 7th and 8th of August. It seems to me that Trump has realized, first of all, that he doesn't need Putin. And Trump has realized, this is the most crucial point, that Putin has started to get in his way, that it is precisely because of Putin that he can't reach an agreement with the Chinese, that it is precisely because of Putin that he has major problems in the Middle East, with the Iranians in Gaza, and that he is failing everywhere. These are the most crucial issues in all the key areas. Taiwan, Iran, Ukraine, all of this is largely because of Putin and his policies. Previously, Americans, or at least Trump, believed that he could win Putin over to his side, make a deal. That Putin would abandon China, abandon the Iranians, and everything would be smooth sailing, everything would work out, they would be able to accomplish everything. And then they would see how things go from there. But no, it turned out that not only does Putin not want to cooperate, but that he is an active player and that he seriously hinders Trump and also tries to undermine and destroy America and its power. Therefore, it seems to me that most likely Trump will ultimately decide to remove Putin and do everything possible to eliminate this regime. So we need to expect bloody, large-scale and fateful events for Russia and for Vladimir Putin's regime in August. I wouldn't rule out that, well, even if the regime doesn't collapse, at the very least, Putin's position will be seriously shaken.
Lindsey Graham is already openly threatening Russia, saying that Trump is someone to be feared. Sasha, we're seeing explosions at oil refineries, oil depots, and gas pipelines. The Power of Siberia gas pipeline has already been attacked by an SBU special operation, and the Moscow region gas pipeline has also been attacked. Is this preparation for the finale? Our viewers are asking, could there be a strike on the Kremlin? Is it just a matter of time?
First, regarding Siberia. It's already the 4th time in Siberia. Really? Where is Siberia? So where is Siberia and where is Ukraine? The 4th time in Siberia. That's what you call a greeting, right? And where are all the air defense and missile defense systems? But around Putin, they guard all his palaces, all his mega bunkers, all his bio toilets, everything. Him and the generals on Rubliovka. There's no air defense anywhere else. Even Ksenia Sobchak has started shouting, give us air defense, give us missile defense, we're scared. Evacuation in the center of Moscow. Even she is shouting now. Even she understands now that something is wrong. That's the first story. Second, regarding Dasha, the most important and strategically significant strikes on the rear, which are absolutely crucial for the overall operation and its success. Everything is just beginning. Do I think there will be strikes on the center of Moscow, let's say on the Kremlin? Not so much. Well, they'll keep launching those strikes on Kyiv. And lately, in general, the intensification of strikes, the scaling up of these attacks, the massiveness of these strikes by Russia on Kyiv, Dnipro, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, Sumy, and many other Ukrainian cities, and the mass destruction of Ukraine's civilian population, all of this is pushing not just Ukraine, but already the West itself toward retaliatory, swift, powerful, large-scale actions. And Trump will give absolutely everything to Ukraine. Not because he wants to, but because there is no other way out. His elite is pushing him toward this. And the Europeans have already realized this. You can see that even the Germans, despite just a week and a half ago, they were asking Trump for guarantees, saying that Ukraine would receive the first systems in about 6 to 8 months, right? They are already sending launchers and systems right now. What does this tell us? That everyone suddenly realized, aha, something is going wrong, that Putin doesn't want to back down, that he will escalate, accelerate events, and moreover, threaten Europe. You've probably heard the statement by Kirilo Budanov, the head of Ukraine's military intelligence, who just recently said that Putin is allocating over $1 trillion for Russia's rearmament through 2030, and that he is preparing to attack alliance member countries, NATO, and specifically the Baltics and Poland, likely in order to create a land corridor to Kaliningrad. He will use Belarus, which is why I'm talking about the possible occupation of Belarus in the near future, and about the destruction of Lukashenko and his regime by Putin, or at least an attempt to do so. I don't rule that out. He will try to use the territory of Belarus to advance toward Kaliningrad, to attack the Baltic states, and moreover, to launch missile strikes on Ukraine from Belarus. He will try to do all of this to make it happen. The other question is, will he succeed? I don't think so. I don't think so. And will it be possible to reach an agreement with Putin? Definitely not. Definitely not. Right now, Putin is trying to buy time. He's trying to take advantage. He still believes there's some window of opportunity for him. But still, the board has been flipped. Everything is moving in Ukraine's favor, even if it's in the long term. Nevertheless, Dasha, everything we're seeing now, all of this is undermining the regime. Putin has no money. He simply doesn't have the money, you see, to wage war. He can make up any numbers he wants. $1 trillion, $2 trillion, and so on. But in order to come up with that figure, he would have to completely destroy his own economy. He can destroy it, but then he'll be destroying everyone around him as well. Is his inner circle ready to be destroyed? That's the key question. Either they will rise up and overthrow Putin, or they will be completely and utterly destroyed, burned to the ground, simply put.
Sasha, you and I have often talked about the gas pipeline in Siberia, which has already been sabotaged several times. And just recently, the CIC gas pipeline, which supplies defense enterprises in the Moscow region and Central Asia, was attacked. But this is already a very serious matter.
Look, Dasha, it's good you brought this up, because I actually forgot to answer that question about the gas pipeline.
Yes.
All these significant strikes, you have to fully understand, are not primarily about, say, the direct supplying of Russian natural gas to Turkey, for example, right? Or towards China. No. This is what supplies power to military units and various types of military facilities, including industry, including factories and plants. So this is extremely important. When you hit a gas pipeline, causing significant damage to it, and a substantial part of it is completely destroyed, it means that a particular military unit or a key Russian defense enterprise will not receive the essential gas supply. They won't get heat. In other words, these are processes that directly undermine Russian defense. These are strikes that directly inflict colossal damage and harm on the Russian defense industry. In other words, we are now doing everything possible to make the Russian rear collapse. This is the most crucial thing. Yes, he sends in cannon fodder. Yes, he still tries to raise the contract rate. Although soon, I think, there will be no contract army in Russia, or it will be partially destroyed, neutralized. But at the same time, no one has canceled the destruction of rear communications, rear support from the Russian Federation. And Ukraine is doing this right now. That's why we target oil refineries, railways, factories, ships, and so on and so forth. This is extremely important right now because offensive actions, yes, of course, you can destroy 1 million people, but even then, Putin's capabilities still remain. That is precisely why Ukraine is targeting the most crucial things. Ukraine is destroying resources. Ukraine is destroying resources, resources that are being sent to the front.
Friends, give a like to our tandem, Dasha plus Sasha, Sasha plus Dasha. We work for you several times a week on my YouTube channel. Happy Foot, Dmitry Gordon's YouTube channel. Write a few kind words in support of our tandem. I know you've grown fond of us. It makes me very happy. I put hearts, replying to all the comments. And in the comments, write where you're watching us from, your location. Sasha, let's go back to August, to that very month. So I've prepared what was happening in Russia during these periods. The coup in 1991, the default in 1998, the sinking of the submarine Kursk in 2000, the radioactive explosion in Severodvinsk in 2019. That was the Nenoxa test site in the Arkhangelsk region, and the Kursk operation by the armed forces of Ukraine in 2024. And now the most important question. In addition, in August, the humiliating Khasavyurt agreements for Russia were signed. There was a fire at the Ostankino TV tower in 2000, the Second Chechen War began in 1999, and the 5-day war with Georgia took place in 2008. What will happen in August 2025?
Dasha, I'm not a fortune teller. I would just like for the regime of Vladimir Putin to collapse, for Putin to be gone, for him to disappear. I think, by the way, that he'll run away. I don't know. I think he'll run away. For some reason, I feel like he already has some his own planes, helicopters ready, not just to escape to some bunker of his, but to go somewhere really far away. I don't know where, but it seems to me that he's prepared for that kind of scenario. Look, for example, the recent decision to give all security agencies at the state level weapons and allow them to shoot. That's 1 million people. That's 1 million people. Security for the State Duma, security for enterprises, security for railways, security for shipping companies, security for ports, and so on, all across Russia. So what does that tell us? Putin probably realizes that things are bad and that everything is moving towards some very uncontrollable process and unpredictable scenario within Russia. Historically, throughout all Russian revolutions, no one ever really knew what was actually happening in the Russian Federation. And no one could ever anticipate a revolution, a riot, turmoil, or a coup. No one could ever see it coming. Russia has always been swept away in 3 days. Russia has always been swept away in 3 days, and this time will be no different. They'll be swept away in 3 days too. Him, Medvedev, Matvienko, all of them, they'll all be swept away in 3 days. But apparently they are preparing for something very big, something large scale inside Russia. Apparently they are worried that unrest might break out in Russia, which is why they are handing out weapons to the loyal ones. The ones who are currently under their control. Those who can receive weapons, who can shoot, and who will be on their side. But this is a big mistake, as it seems to me, because as soon as they hand out weapons to such a huge number of people, not everyone will want to use those weapons against their loved ones who are right there beside them. They might turn those weapons against Putin. I don't know what will happen this August, Dasha. I don't know how this month will end, but it's obvious that this month will be full of surprises. And we need to expect, first of all, retaliation, and secondly, another shift in the war, another stage of the war. We need to expect a complete reformatting of Trump's policy towards Russia. We need to expect that Putin will be betrayed by his allies and his associates. Maybe by the end of August, we'll see everyone betray Vladimir Putin. Maybe not everyone. We'll see. I think that in August, we'll see Putin try to put pressure on Lukashenko. It probably won't work. So there will be a lot of events in August, and it seems to me that right now, the climax is beginning, the climax of the war. During this stage of the war, it's the climax from the perspective of the Russian regime, and the climax in this ruined romance between Trump and Putin.
So let's talk about the romance. This will be the final part of our interview. It's clear what will happen after August 8th, but right now, Crimea. The Kazachia Bukhta neighborhood in Sevastopol is being rocked by powerful explosions. They continued throughout the night and into the morning. The 810th Marine Brigade in Kazachia Bukhta was hit, as well as Russian air defense facilities near the airfield at Cape Khersonis. Lately, we've been seriously attacking air defense targets in Crimea. So, as I understand it, we're preparing some kind of surprise for Putin on August 24th for the Independence Day of our beautiful country.
Can you imagine it's August 24th and what a gift that would be? Maliuk blew up Crimea, that Kerch bridge, the Crimean bridge, right? Or the Black Sea Fleet is completely destroyed. Kazachia Bukhta, right? Well, what are they doing? They're not doing anything. They took the air defense and missile defense systems from Donetsk and Luhansk regions, primarily from the occupied part of Donetsk, and sent them to Crimea. It didn't help at all. The Kerch Bridge has already been closed. There's just a tiny, thin trickle going through there. Yeah, people are waiting in line in their cars for 3 days, just sitting there, unable to get through. And nothing helps. They've even used a human shield, keeping people there, holding them up. They've already moved both air defense and missile defense systems over, and still nothing. All that's left is to drop Nadezhda Babkina, that idiot shaman, and Mizulina there by parachute. Let them defend it. After all, that's the Cossack Bay. Let them. That's exactly where they belong. They're all so brave. Sen Gazmanov there too. They're so brave. They keep saying they'll fight, that they're for Russia, that they're for Putin. Well then, go ahead, please, parachute in. Cossack Bay, go defend it. Because Putin isn't planning to defend Crimea. And he isn't planning to defend Donbass either. Well, Donbass because he basically doesn't want to, and Crimea because he simply can't anymore. Because now everything needs to be brought back to his residences. There are just too many of them. And that's where the money is stashed. All his cash is hidden there. That's why it needs to be guarded, and his family needs to be protected too. In fact, all his own people need to be protected. And he no longer has the strength or resources for all these territories. You can see how Sochi has been burning lately. And yet he used to be so proud, poured so much money into Sochi, all those damn Olympics. Just think how much money he put in there. How much money he poured into those residences of his, the ones he built in Bosharov Ruchi. how much he spent on reconstruction, how much money he invested in Gelendzhik, that very Gelendzhik, his own palace. How much cash he poured in there. Now he has to protect all of it, Dasha. What Crimea? What Donbass? In Donbass, people go 3 days without water, can't drink, can't wash, can't do anything. There's dysentery there. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. That's everything Putin brought with him. I think the people who are there now, they understand perfectly well what Putin is, what his regime is, what the Russian Spring is, and what the stinking Russian occupation army is. There is a humanitarian catastrophe in Ukrainian Donetsk, in Donetsk Oblast, for those who don't know. It's simply a humanitarian catastrophe. And this is the result of Vladimir Putin. He doesn't give a damn about anything, period. So, well, I think he doesn't care about ultimatums either, as we can see.
You just mentioned Sochi. I actually wanted to talk about that. This is already the second time we've launched a powerful attack on Sochi. First and foremost on the oil depots. Rosneft is still burning very seriously. And for the first time, there was an attack, including, well, since we targeted Rosneft, it's located right next to the civilian airport. It's also completely unclear why they placed everything like that. But the civilian airport was closed. Everyone went to bomb shelters and even the windows were blown out there. But a lot of people are saying, wow, why are you bombing Sochi? It's not Moscow. Sochi isn't Russia. When I heard these phrases, I started thinking about the fragmentation of Russia once again, you know? Sochi isn't Russia. They say Sochi isn't Moscow.
You see, the fragmentation of Russia, what Ukraine is doing right now, and actually not just Ukraine, as far as I understand, this whole story with the airports, this whole story with Aeroflot, these are very important things. You see, all of Russia is fixated on Moscow. Those flights happen, and that's it, and the entire railway system runs through Moscow. If you destroy a significant area of the railways, or if you take out the most important hubs, airport hubs, flight hubs on the territory of the Russian capital, that's it. All of Russia is simply cut off. It's completely out of communication. Dasha, you see, people who have actually been to Russia and have traveled extensively across its vast expanse, quite a significant amount of territory, let's say hundreds upon hundreds of kilometers, they understand perfectly well and truly that you simply cannot easily reach many, many cities within the expansive Russian Federation. Not by personal car, not by the extensive rail network, and certainly not by passenger train. For the most part, the only connection there is by plane. Only airplanes, civil aviation, both regional and federal. So, when you take down Russian aviation, when you simply take down Russian airports, when you take down Aeroflot, the most important, practically monopolistic airline in terms of flights within Russia, you fragment the Russian Federation. And the longer this situation persists inside Russia, because, for example, people from Kaliningrad, they very rarely visit the canonical part of the mainland, right? Of the Russian Federation. They rarely go there. They don't know what Moscow looks like. They don't see themselves as part of Russia. They don't care under which flag they live. The only thing keeping them there is the Russian Baltic Fleet. As soon as you remove it or sink it, the people of Kaliningrad won't care. And neither will Sochi nor Novosibirsk. In fact, no one cares. And the fragmentation of Russia is inevitable. And the fragmentation of the Caucasus is inevitable too. And things will flare up there in the near future as well. There are two litmus tests, two litmus papers, Belarus and Chechnya. And depending on what happens there in the near future, and something is likely to happen in both places, because both the Lubyanka and Putin are geared towards certain processes. So depending on what happens there, we will soon understand what, in general, is going to happen in the Russian Federation, where things are heading, either toward a major revolution, or a big revanche, or the destruction of the old elite, and so on down the list. But fragmentation is inevitable, because when people are left without communication, without the ability to travel or get anywhere and so on, when the elites are locked up in their own regions and essentially they are no longer accountable to the center because they can't get there, no one can meet with them, they can't be controlled and so on. When every elite, every governor, every mayor already has their own private military company, their own thugs, especially people who have left the front, come back, picked up automatic weapons and started terrorizing the local population. Now every colonel or general has their own brigades in their respective areas. And that's how fragmentation begins. That's how not just banditry starts, but a slow-burning, small-scale revolution begins in the regions of Russia. And this revolution, this turmoil, gradually keeps moving forward. And it will engulf the entire Russian Federation. I'm not sure Putin will have time to rearm Russia. I think that Russia itself and Russians themselves will take up arms without Putin.
Yes, Russia's rear is on fire, the front is frozen, and we are approaching the final phase of the war. And without a doubt, Oleksandr Demchenko has just described the scenario for the coming month and beyond. For the finale, I definitely have one question for you regarding Ramzan Kadyrov. Kadyrov, who nearly drowned in Turkey, has published a video of a light morning workout. He looks very thin. Sasha, what's your impression of what's going on there? Why is everyone so actively reporting about his death, about him drowning and so on, that he's in a clinic and then he suddenly reappears seemingly healthy, working out, at least in his own view? What's happening with Ramzan?
I don't know what his health condition is. I don't want to speculate because I don't have that information. It seems to me, Dasha, that the Lubyanka, the FSB, which has long had it in for Kadyrov, wants to get rid of him. They probably realize that he's in bad shape, that there's something wrong with his health. Most likely, they can use this to blackmail Putin, to ask Putin, to try to persuade Putin. Kadyrov, on the other hand, wants to preserve his clan because he understands that if he doesn't, that's it. After him, there will be no one left. There will be completely different people, and his clan will be destroyed. That's always what happens in such societies. But I think that right now, Ramzan Kadyrov is behaving very cautiously, very carefully. And he is fully aware that Vladimir Putin is aiming to reformat the entire system. It's not for nothing that he's gone after Lukashenko. Not for nothing that he's gone after Shoigu. Not for nothing that he's gone after Medvedev. Really, after everyone, even Patrushev, who gave him a medal, right? Now, and Putin told him, now I will reward you. Now we also need to see what will happen with Patrushev. What kind of reward, in quotes, this will be from Vladimir Putin, right? How will he reward him? A man who knows a lot, who has helped a lot, who has handled a lot of dirty work, bloody work to help Vladimir Putin, right? Does Putin still need such a person, such a witness as Patrushev, right? Questions. I'll reward you too. How should this be interpreted after the self-liquidation, the self-inflicted shooting of the Minister of Transport, the former Starovoy? You see? So how are they supposed to take this now? I'll reward you too. That's why Kadyrov, seeing this situation, isn't just transferring all his assets to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates for no reason. He's not just transferring and building apartments and houses there for himself and his family for nothing. In other words, he's preparing for something. So there are two litmus tests. Once again, Lukashenko and Kadyrov. And it's important to keep an eye on these two. They, more than anyone, have a good sense of what's happening in Russia, what's going on in the Kremlin, and what Putin is prepared to do. Did you notice, Dasha, all that chatter Putin put on in Valam, sitting on a bench with Lukashenko? The most crucial part there is the story about the Hazel Grove. When Putin said by the end of the year the Hazel Grove in Belarus will be in place, and Lukashenko replies, we don't need to rush, we need to get everything set up, we need to install anti-missile systems, air defense, we need to train people, there's no need to hurry, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Let's do everything gradually. We can wait. What does this tell us? Lukashenko doesn't want any occupation. He doesn't need any Hazel Grove. He doesn't need any nuclear weapons there. He doesn't want any control from the FSB or from the Russian military. And he doesn't need Putin in Belarus either. He understands perfectly well that after the Hazel Grove comes Lukashenko's departure. And Kadyrov understands perfectly well that this whole story, all these speculations are constant. We don't know why Kadyrov suddenly became ill, why he started to look like that. Maybe he was poisoned, we just don't know. Over there, everyone gets poisoned, everyone gets killed, everyone shoots themselves, everyone gets thrown out of windows. This is happening in the Russian Federation. And this is far from the first case. It's just that a minister is such a symbolic figure, a historically significant figure, even if he was a complete nobody. But still, he's a minister. And they all understand perfectly well, Dasha, that Vladimir Putin hasn't just lost his mind. He's gone off the rails, you know? I mean, he's completely lost it. He's ready to take everyone out. No one ever thought that the phrase waste them in the outhouse, which he said in his earliest presidential years, would end up being directed at his own elite as well. You see? Now the main question is, who will take out whom in the outhouse? Putin them or they Putin?
And that's the finale, friends. Sasha Demchenko, top analyst, as always, twice a week on my YouTube channel. Friends, please like this video. In the comments, write a few kind words about our tandem, Sasha plus Dasha, Dasha plus Sasha, and let us know where you're watching from. Sasha, thank you so much, and see you this Tuesday.
See you next time. Bye.